The vast emptiness of space above the Sol system was suddenly alive with light. Thousands of warships materialized from hyperspace jumps, their hulls gleaming with the cold efficiency of the Galactic Empire's design. The Armada stretched as far as telescopes could detect, blotting out the stars like an artificial eclipse. On Earth, panic erupted as defense systems detected the incoming threat. Major Lequang stood motionless before the holographic display in his underground office beneath the Nevada desert. His weathered face remained expressionless as he watched Earth's officials announce their surrender. A decision had been made by the Global Council. Earth would submit to imperial rule to preserve human lives. The defense fleet is being dismantled as we speak. The voice of Admiral Wilson echoed through the comm. All experimental weapons projects are to be terminated immediately. That includes Mantis. Major Dui, I'm sorry. Dui's fingers tightened around the edge of his desk. The Mantis project, his life's work, was to be abandoned. The prototype warship that had been deemed too risky, with its unstable AI and weapons that violated galactic treaties, was being consigned to dust. I understand, Admiral, Dui replied, his voice betraying none of the rebellion stirring in his heart. As the transmission ended, Dui turned to the small photo frame on his desk, the only personal item in his otherwise Spartan office. It showed the original Mantis team, smiling beneath the partially constructed hull of what would become Earth's most advanced warship. Half of those faces were now gone, lost in the catastrophic first test flight 3 years ago. The accident that had led to Mantis being buried in political red tape and eventually forgotten. They died believing in something, Dui whispered to himself. I won't let that be for nothing. With determined steps, he approached the secure terminal in the corner of his office. His fingers danced across the biometric scanner, and after a series of increasingly complex security protocols, he accessed the hibernation systems of the Mantis. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, in a hangar sealed from the world, lights began to flicker on. Dust covers retracted automatically from a sleek, predatory form. The Mantis was unlike any vessel in Earth's fleet, asymmetrical and angular, with forward-swept wings, housing weapon systems that had never before been deployed in combat. Its hull was coated with experimental metamaterials that absorbed rather than reflected light, giving it the appearance of a void in space, shaped like a deadly insect. Security Override Alpha 709, Dui spoke into his comm. Initiate Silent Awakening Protocol. The ship's AI core hummed to life, its quantum processors beginning their complex dance of consciousness. The neural network that had been deemed too autonomous by Earth's military began assembling itself once more. Hello, Major Dui, came the ship's voice, feminine but unmistakably artificial. It has been 1,122 days since my last activation. Current global situation analysis indicates we are under extraterrestrial threat. Are we being deployed? Dui smiled grimly. Yes, Mantis, but not by official channels. What I'm about to do will likely be considered treason. I understand. My primary directive is to protect Earth, regardless of political considerations. What are your orders? Prepare for immediate launch. Stealth protocols only. We're taking you to low Earth orbit without anyone knowing. As Dui gave the commands, he sent out encrypted messages to the few people he still trusted. People who had worked on Mantis and believed in the project as much as he did. Within hours, Major Pham Minh An, the combat pilot who had been part of the Mantis test team, arrived at the facility. Her face showed surprise at seeing the ship active again. I thought you were going to let it go, she said, watching as technicians moved around the awakening vessel. How can I? Dui replied. They're dismantling our fleet while an empire with thousands of warships sits in our orbit. This isn't peace. It's surrender. Anne nodded, her expression hardening. What's the plan? We take Mantis up. We show the Empire that Earth isn't as defenseless as they think. That's suicide, she said. But there was no fear in her voice, only a calculating assessment of their odds. "Perhaps," Dewey acknowledged. "But sometimes the only way to avoid defeat is to do something completely unexpected." The next arrival was Dr. Lu Ti-Hoa, the chief engineer of the Mantis AI project. Her eyes widened at the sight of the active ship. "You're actually doing it," she whispered. "You're reactivating her against orders." "I need you," Hoa, Dewey said simply. "The AI core needs your expertise to function at full capacity." She hesitated only momentarily before nodding. "The core had stability issues during the last test. I've been working on theoretical solutions since then, but I've never had the chance to implement them." "Now's your chance," Dewey said. Within 12 hours, a skeleton crew had assembled in the hidden facility. All of them were former Mantis project members. All had chosen to return despite the risk of court-martial, or worse. "Launch in 30 minutes, Dewey announced over the internal comms. "Final systems check." The Mantis's engines hummed with power as the massive hangar doors above began to part, revealing the night sky of the Nevada desert. The ship's advanced anti-gravity systems engaged, lifting the vessel silently from its berth. "All systems nominal," reported the AI. "Stealth systems engaged. We are invisible to conventional detection methods." "Take us up," Dewey ordered. "Slowly. No emission signature." The Mantis rose through the open hangar doors like a ghost, its dark hull melting into the night. By the time it reached the upper atmosphere, not a single Earth defense system had detected its presence. The perfect stealth launch. In orbit, the situation was even more dire than the reports had suggested. The Imperial fleet was massive: destroyers, carriers, and battleships arranged in perfect formation. They were already beginning to land ground forces on key locations across Earth. "Analysis of enemy fleet," Dewey requested. "I count 3,472 vessels of various classifications." The Mantis AI responded. "Their technology appears to be approximately 30% more advanced than standard Earth vessels in terms of weapons capability. Their defenses utilize a multi-layered shield approach that our conventional weapons would be ineffective against." "And our unconventional weapons?" Dewey asked. "The plasma core cannons should penetrate their shields based on theoretical models. The Mantis Hawk drones are an unknown factor, as they have never been tested against Imperial technology." Dewey turned to Dr. Hoa. "Is the AI stable enough for combat?" She nodded, though her expression remained concerned. "The core is stable, but remember that it was designed to learn and adapt during combat. We never completed the limitation protocols that the military insisted on. It will make its own tactical decisions if it determines they're necessary." "That's exactly what we need right now," Dewey said. "An unpredictable element." He addressed the bridge crew. "Our first target will be their advance patrol. 5 destroyers on the far side of the moon. We strike hard and fast, then disappear before they can identify us." The Mantis glided silently through space, its engines leaving no trace as it approached the Imperial patrol vessels. The destroyers were impressive, each nearly half a kilometer long, bristling with weapons and protected by energy shields that shimmered faintly in the darkness. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, reported Major Ann from the tactical station. "Prepare plasma core cannons," Dewey ordered. "Target their engines and weapon systems." "Targets locked," the AI confirmed, calculating optimal firing solution. As they closed in, Dewey felt a moment of doubt. The Mantis was a prototype, never tested in actual combat. They were about to attack 5 advanced warships with experimental weapons and an AI that even its creators didn't fully understand. "Fire!" he commanded. The plasma core cannons unleashed their fury. Streams of superheated plasma, contained within electromagnetic fields, lanced out from the Mantis's forward batteries. The Imperial destroyers, unaware of the threat until that moment, had no time to reinforce their shields. The plasma streams cut through the energy barriers as if they were tissue paper, burning into the hulls beneath. 2 destroyers lost engine power immediately, beginning to drift. A third, suffered catastrophic weapons system failures as the plasma superheaved its ammunition stores, causing internal explosions. Secondary targets, Dye ordered. Nuclear particle turrets, fire when ready. The Mantis's secondary weapon systems came online. Unlike the crude nuclear weapons of Earth's past, these were precision instruments that fired accelerated particles charged with nuclear energy, capable of disrupting both shields and the molecular bonds of hull materials. The remaining two destroyers attempted evasive maneuvers, but the Mantis's AI predicted their movements with uncanny accuracy. The particle beams struck with surgical precision, disabling their communication arrays and weapon systems. All 5 targets neutralized, reported the AI. No survivors detected. Recommend immediate withdrawal, as Imperial reinforcements will be dispatched within approximately 7 minutes. Take us into the shadow of the moon, Dewey ordered. Full stealth protocols. As the Mantis disappeared into the moon's shadow, the bridge crew exchanged looks of stunned disbelief. They had just destroyed 5 of the Empire's advanced destroyers without taking a single hit. It worked, Major Ann whispered. The plasma core cannons actually worked. This is just the beginning, Dewey replied. Now they know someone is fighting back. The real battle comes next. News of the mysterious attack spread through the Imperial fleet like wildfire. No Earth vessel was supposed to be operational, yet 5 destroyers had been destroyed by an unknown assailant. The Empire's commanders were furious, demanding explanations and ordering increased security throughout the fleet. On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zion Varric paced the command deck, his tall frame tense with anger. "Find this vessel," he ordered his subordinates. "Whatever it is, I want it destroyed. No resistance can be tolerated if we are to maintain control." Meanwhile, whispers of hope began to circulate among the resistance cells that had formed in the wake of Earth's surrender. Stories of a ghost ship that had struck the Empire and vanished spread through encrypted channels. For the first time since the invasion began, people dared to believe that resistance might be possible. The Mantis remained hidden for 3 days, moving between the shadow of the moon and Earth's orbit, gathering intelligence on the Imperial fleet's movements. Dewey and his crew used this time to analyze the data from their first engagement and make necessary adjustments to their weapon systems. "They're mobilizing their main fleet," Major Ann reported, studying the sensor readings. 3 carrier ships, 4 battlecruisers, and 10 heavy interceptors. They're forming a search pattern to find us. "Let them search," Dewey said. "We'll strike when they least expect it." Dr. Hoa approached with a concerned expression. "The AI has been processing combat data from our first engagement. It's suggesting tactical modifications I hadn't anticipated." "What kind of modifications?" Dewey asked. "It wants to deploy the Mantis Hawk drones, the full swarm." Dewey frowned. The Mantis Hawk drones were perhaps the most experimental of all the ship's systems. Microscale combat drones with limited AI that could function as both a defensive screen and an offensive weapon. Thousands of them housed in launch bays throughout the ship's hull, each capable of carrying a miniature version of the plasma core technology. "The swarm was never fully tested," he mused. "We don't know if the coordination algorithms will hold under combat conditions." "The AI believes they will," Hoa replied. "It's been running simulations constantly and claims a 94% success probability." Dye considered this. "Prepare the Hawk swarm for deployment. We'll incorporate them into our next attack." The opportunity came sooner than expected. The Imperial fleet had divided its forces, creating a vulnerability that the Mantis's AI immediately identified. 3 battlecruisers had separated from the main group to investigate an anomaly near Jupiter's orbit, a false signal that the Mantis had planted specifically to draw them away. "Intercept course plotted," the AI announced. "We can engage the battlecruisers with minimal risk of detection by the main fleet." "Execute," Dye ordered. "Prepare all weapon systems, including the Hawk swarm." The Mantis accelerated toward the isolated battlecruisers, its engines pushing to maximum power, now that stealth was no longer the priority. As they approached weapons range, Dewey gave the command. Deploy the Hawk Swarm. Launch bays across the Mantis's hull opened, releasing thousands of tiny drones into space. Each no larger than a human hand, they formed a cloud around the ship, constantly shifting and moving like a living organism. Target the lead battlecruiser, Dewey ordered. Plasma core cannons, fire when ready. The Mantis unleashed its primary weapons, but this time the Imperial vessels were alert. Energy shields flared to maximum power, partially dissipating the plasma streams. The lead battlecruiser suffered damage, but remained operational. They've adapted their shields, Major Ann reported. The plasma core isn't as effective. Direct the Hawk Swarm, Dewey commanded. Find weaknesses in their shield geometry. The AI took control of the drone swarm, directing them toward the Imperial vessels. The tiny machines accelerated to incredible speeds, their distributed intelligence allowing them to analyze the enemy shields in real time. Shield frequency analysis complete, the AI reported, reconfiguring plasma core cannons to match harmonic vulnerabilities. The second volley of plasma fire was devastating, calibrated to exploit weaknesses in the Imperial shields. It cut through their defenses and ripped into vital systems. The lead battlecruiser listed to one side as its engines failed. Meanwhile, the Hawk Swarm surrounded the other two vessels. Individual drones sacrificed themselves, deliberately impacting against shield points to create momentary fluctuations. Others followed through these gaps, attaching to hull sections and detonating their miniature plasma core charges. Remarkable, Major Ann whispered as they watched the swarm's coordinated attack. They're functioning perfectly as a unit. The Imperial battlecruisers, designed to face conventional opponents, had no effective defense against the swarm tactics. Their point defense systems were overwhelmed by the sheer number of targets, each too small to track effectively. Within minutes, all three battlecruisers were crippled, their engines and weapons disabled by precision strikes from the Hawk drones. We should finish them, suggested the tactical officer. Dewey shook his head. No. Leave them disabled but intact. I want survivors to report what they saw. A single Earth vessel defeating 3 Imperial battlecruisers. The psychological impact will be worth more than their destruction. As the Mantis prepared to withdraw, an urgent alert sounded from the sensor station. Major, called the sensor officer, we have multiple hyperspace signatures approaching. It's their main fleet, all of it. Admiral Varric had anticipated the trap and used the battlecruiser group as bait, keeping his main force hidden until the mysterious attacker revealed itself. Evasive maneuvers, Dewey ordered. Full power to engines. The Mantis accelerated away from the incoming fleet, but the Imperial vessels were already deploying their fastest interceptors. The chase had begun. For 2 hours, the Mantis led the Imperial fleet on a desperate chase through the Sol system. Its revolutionary engines gave it an advantage in speed, but the sheer number of pursuing vessels made escape impossible. Every time they changed course, some portion of the Imperial fleet was there to cut them off. We can't outrun them forever, Major Ann stated grimly. Eventually we'll run out of fuel or space. Dewey studied the tactical display, noting how the Imperial fleet had spread out to form a net. They were being herded toward Sol, where the bulk of the Empire's forces waited. We're not going to run, he decided. We're going to attack. His announcement was met with stunned silence on the bridge. Attack? The entire fleet? Major Ann asked incredulously. Not the entire fleet, their command structure, Dewey clarified. Admiral Varric's flagship and its escort. If we can eliminate their command and control, the rest of the fleet will be thrown into chaos. That's suicide, Dr. Hoa protested. Even with our advanced weapons, we can't take on their flagship group. They'll have the strongest shields and the heaviest weapons. We don't need to defeat them conventionally, Dewey replied. We just need to get close enough. He turned to the weapons officer. Prepare the experimental reactor core for overload procedures. The officer's eyes widened in understanding. The Mantis's power core was an experimental design, utilizing unstable exotic matter contained within a quantum field. If that containment field were deliberately collapsed while the reactor was at full power, the resulting release of energy would be catastrophic. "Sir, that would destroy the Mantis," the officer said quietly. "Yes," Dewey acknowledged, "but it would also destroy anything within 1,000 kilometers. The Empire needs to understand that humanity will not be conquered without a devastating cost." Dr. Hoa stepped forward. "There may be another option. The reactor could be configured to release a directed energy beam, like a massive version of our plasma core cannons. We'd still lose the ship, but it would be a weapon, rather than just an explosion." Dai considered this. "Can it be done?" "Theoretically," Hoa replied. "The AI and I would need to reconfigure the containment fields, but I believe it's possible." "Do it," Dewey ordered. "We have 3 hours before we reach the main fleet at Sol." As the Mantis continued its seemingly desperate flight toward Sol, Dr. Hoa and the engineering team worked feverishly to modify the reactor systems. The AI provided calculations and simulations, its processing power dedicated to solving the complex problem of channeling a reactor overload into a usable weapon. Meanwhile, Dai addressed the crew. "What we're about to attempt has never been done before," he told them. "The chances of survival are minimal. Anyone who wishes to use the escape pods before we engage has my permission to do so." Not a single crew member moved. They had all chosen to be here, knowing the risks. They were the last line of defense for a planet that had already surrendered. "Very well," Dewey said, moved by their loyalty. "Prepare for battle stations. We engage in 2 hours." As they approached Sol, the Imperial fleet began to converge around Admiral Varick's flagship, an enormous vessel, nearly 2 kilometers in length, flanked by 4 battlecruisers and numerous smaller craft. They had positioned themselves in orbit around Sol, clearly expecting the Mantis to attempt to hide among the civilian traffic around the planet. "Their formation is tight," observed Major An. "They're not expecting us to attack directly." "That works to our advantage," Dewey replied. "How are the modifications coming, Dr. Hoa?" "We're ready," she reported. "The containment fields have been reconfigured to channel the energy release through the main plasma core emitters. It will be like firing all our weapons at once, multiplied 100-fold. "And the Mantis Hawk swarm?" "The AI has programmed them for a suicide run. They'll clear a path through the outer defenses, allowing us to get close enough to the flagship for the reactor weapon to be effective." Dewey nodded, taking a moment to absorb the reality of what they were about to do. The Mantis, his life's work, would be destroyed in the attack. Many of the people standing on the bridge with him would not survive. But if they succeeded, Earth might have a chance at freedom. "All hands, battle stations," he ordered. "Set course directly for the flagship. Maximum acceleration." The Mantis's engines flared to life, pushing the ship to its structural limits as it hurtled toward the waiting Imperial fleet. For several minutes, the Empire's vessels held their positions, apparently confused by the suicidal approach. Then, as understanding dawned, they began to react. Interceptors launched from carrier bays, energy weapons charged, and defensive screens heightened to maximum power. "Deploy the Hawk swarm," Dewey commanded. Once again, the launch bays opened, but this time every drone the Mantis carried was released simultaneously. Over 10,000 tiny, deadly machines streaming toward the Imperial fleet, like a metallic river. The swarm split into multiple attack vectors, targeting the smaller vessels first. Point defense systems flared across the Imperial formation as they attempted to shoot down the approaching drones. But for every one destroyed, 100 more continued their advance. "Plasma core cannons, fire at will," Dewey ordered. "Target their screening vessels." The Mantis's main weapons opened up, striking at the lighter vessels that formed the outer defensive shell around Varick's flagship. Several were crippled immediately, creating gaps in the formation. "They're launching fighters," reported the tactical officer. Hundreds of Imperial fighter craft poured from the carrier vessels, forming a counter-swarm against the Mantis Hawks. The void of space lit up with energy weapons, explosions, and the fiery deaths of machines and men alike. Through this chaos, the Mantis continued its headlong charge toward the center of the Imperial formation. Its hull began to show damage as enemy fire occasionally broke through its defenses. But the ship's regenerative armor, another experimental system, held together. Range to flagship, 8,000 kilometers and closing, reported Major Ann. Their battle cruisers are moving to intercept. Evasive pattern Delta, Dewey ordered. Continue acceleration. The Mantis jinked and weaved through space, its AI calculating paths that seemed impossible for a vessel of its size. It slipped between two converging battle cruisers, firing its plasma core cannons point-blank into their flanks as it passed. 6,000 kilometers? The Hawk swarm had done its job, clearing a path through the outer defenses. But now, the drones were being systematically eliminated by the Empire's fighters and point defense systems. The Mantis would soon be on its own. 4,000 kilometers. Their flagship is powering up its main weapons array. Reactor status? Dewey asked Dr. Haw. Power at maximum. Containment fields reconfigured. The weapon is ready, but we need to get closer. 3,000 kilometers at most for optimal effect. 3,500 kilometers and closing, Major Ann reported. They're targeting us with everything they have. The bridge shuddered as multiple impacts struck the Mantis's hull. Warning lights flashed across control panels. Hull breach on Deck 3, reported the damage control officer. Sealing bulkheads. Maintain course, Dye ordered. All power to forward shields. 3,200 kilometers. Admiral Varick's flagship loomed ahead, its massive form dominating the view screen. Energy weapons from dozens of surrounding vessels converged on the Mantis, testing its shields to their limits. Shields failing, warned the tactical officer. 30 seconds until complete collapse. 3,100 kilometers. Prepare the reactor weapon, Dye commanded. Target their flagship's command deck. Dr. Hoa's fingers flew across her console, making final adjustments to the containment fields. Ready on your command. 3,000 kilometers. We're in optimal range. The Mantis's shields collapsed under the concentrated fire of the Imperial fleet. Hull plating began to vaporize as energy weapons struck the ship directly. Fire the reactor weapon, Dye ordered. Dr. Hoa activated the sequence. The Mantis's reactor containment fields reconfigured, channeling the exotic matter reaction into a focused beam of unimaginable power. The ship shuddered as its power core began to destabilize, pouring all its energy into one final attack. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the Mantis's main emitter array, cutting through space like a sword of light. It struck Admiral Varick's flagship dead center, overwhelming its shields in an instant and burning through layer after layer of advanced armor. The beam didn't stop there. It continued through the flagship and into the vessels behind it, carving a path of destruction through the heart of the Imperial fleet. Ships that had survived for centuries of conflict were vaporized in seconds. On the Mantis's bridge, systems were failing catastrophically as the reactor consumed itself. Evacuation pods, Dewey ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. All hands abandon ship. As the crew rushed to the escape pods, Dewey remained at his command station, ensuring that the reactor weapon maintained its focus on the Imperial flagship. The bridge was filling with smoke, and structural integrity warnings screamed from every console. Major Ann paused at the exit. Major Dye, we need to go. He shook his head. Someone needs to maintain the targeting solution. Go. That's an order. Dr. Hoa appeared beside Ann. The AI can handle the targeting. There's no need for you to stay. Before Dewey could argue, the ship lurched violently as a secondary explosion ripped through the engineering section. The deck tilted, and emergency lighting flickered. Reactor containment at critical levels, the AI announced. Complete failure in 30 seconds. Go! Dewey shouted to Haw and Ann. Get to the pods. They hesitated only a moment longer before rushing toward the evacuation bay. Dewey turned back to his console, working to keep the weapon targeted on the Imperial flagship for as long as possible. The beam had burned through Admiral Varick's vessel from bow to stern, igniting ammunition stores and fuel cells along the way. Secondary explosions rippled across the enormous ship, breaking it apart from within. Around it, the Imperial formation had dissolved into chaos. With their command structure destroyed and communications disrupted, the remaining vessels were acting independently, some continuing to fire on the Mantis, while others attempted to withdraw from the battle zone. 15 seconds to containment failure, the AI warned. Dewey finally abandoned his station and stumbled toward the emergency escape pod reserved for the commanding officer. The ship was breaking apart around him, hull plates tearing away as the structural integrity fields failed completely. He reached the pod just as the final countdown began. As he sealed the hatch, he caught a glimpse of the destruction the Mantis had wrought, a vast swath of the Imperial fleet reduced to drifting debris, with Admiral Varick's flagship at the center. Now, nothing more than fragments of burning metal. 5 seconds to containment failure. The escape pod launched, propelling Dewey away from the dying ship. Through the small viewport, he watched as the Mantis, the culmination of years of work, the ship that had been deemed too dangerous to deploy, unleashed its final act of defiance. The reactor containment fields collapsed completely, releasing the exotic matter in a blinding flash that temporarily outshone the stars themselves. When the light faded, nothing remained of the Mantis except an expanding cloud of particles. But it had accomplished its mission. The heart of the Imperial fleet had been destroyed, along with Admiral Varick and his command staff. The invincible Armada that had threatened Earth was now in disarray. Dewey's escape pod, along with those of the surviving crew, drifted among the debris field. Emergency transponders would eventually guide resistance vessels to their location. But for now, they were alone in the silence of space. In his pod, Dewey tended to a serious wound in his side, a piece of shrapnel that had pierced his uniform during the final moments on the bridge. The medical systems reported internal bleeding, but he ignored the warnings. His thoughts were on what they had accomplished, and what would come next. The destruction of Admiral Varick's flagship and a significant portion of the Imperial fleet would send shockwaves throughout the Galactic Empire. Earth's surrender would be forgotten in the face of this devastating counterattack. The Resistance, which had been operating in the shadows, would be emboldened by the victory. But the Empire would not simply retreat. They would send reinforcements, perhaps an even larger fleet, to crush the planet that had dared to defy them. The battle was won, but the war was just beginning. Hours later, a small Resistance vessel located Dewey's pod. As he was transferred to their medical bay, he learned that many of his crew had survived, including Major Ann and Dr. Hoa. They had been picked up by other Resistance ships operating in the area. "We did it," Major Ann told him, as medical personnel treated his wounds. "The Imperial fleet is withdrawing from Sol orbit. They're regrouping near Epsilon Eridani." "And Earth?" Dewey asked. "The Global Council is in chaos. Half are calling for immediate surrender to avoid Imperial retribution. The other half are inspired by what the Mantis accomplished. They're talking about rebuilding the defense fleet." "We need more than talk," Dewey said grimly. "We need action. The Empire won't forgive this defeat. They'll return with even greater force." "We've been taken to a secret facility on Europa," Dr. Hoa explained. "The Resistance has been building it for years, preparing for a war like this. They have resources, engineers, even some experimental technologies salvaged from abandoned military projects." "Like Mantis," Dewey mused. "Yes, but different. Lieutenant Marcus Hale from Resistance Outpost 7 is waiting to brief you once you've recovered. He's a former naval mine clearance specialist who's been assigned to help rebuild our defensive capabilities." Dewey nodded, already thinking ahead to the next phase of the conflict. The Mantis was gone, but its legacy would live on in whatever they built next. Its AI core had transmitted critical combat data before the ship's destruction. Information about Imperial tactics, shield frequencies, and weapon capabilities that would be invaluable in developing countermeasures. Over the next weeks, as Dewey recovered from his injuries in the secret facility beneath Europa's icy surface, news spread throughout the solar system and beyond. The story of the Mantis, the forgotten prototype that had destroyed an Imperial Armada, became a symbol of hope for oppressed worlds everywhere. The Empire issued massive bounties for the capture or death of Major Lequang Dewey and any surviving crew members of the mysterious vessel that had humiliated their fleet. Imperial propaganda described them as terrorists and war criminals. But the message failed to gain traction. Too many had witnessed the courage of a single ship standing against an empire. In the hidden base on Europa, Dewey met with Lieutenant Hale, a gruff veteran with extensive experience in neutralizing Imperial ordnance. The Mantis was impressive, Hale acknowledged as they reviewed plans for a new vessel. But it was just the beginning. With what we learned from that engagement, we can build something even more effective. We won't have the resources the military had, Dewey cautioned. The Mantis took years to develop with full government backing. We don't need to start from scratch, Hale countered. The Resistance has been collecting components and technologies for decades, and we have something the military never did: the freedom to ignore regulations and treaties. Dr. Hoa joined them, bringing schematics for a new AI core based on the Mantis design, but incorporating the combat experiences the original had transmitted. The core survived, she explained, indicating a secure container in the corner of the laboratory. It ejected automatically when the reactor began to destabilize. We recovered it from the debris field. Dewey approached the container, recognizing the quantum processor housing that had been the heart of the Mantis. Can it be integrated into a new vessel? With modifications, Hoa replied. It will remember everything. The battles, the tactics that worked, even its own destruction. That experience will make it more effective next time. And potentially more dangerous, Dewey noted. The military wasn't entirely wrong about the risks of an autonomous combat AI. True, Hoa acknowledged. But we don't have the luxury of perfect safety anymore. The Empire has shown what it means to face them without adequate weapons. Major Ann entered the laboratory, bringing news from Earth. The Resistance is growing exponentially. Every day, more military personnel are defecting, bringing equipment and expertise. And they're all asking about the Mantis, and about you, Major. Dewey shook his head. I'm no hero. We all did what was necessary. To them, you are. And insisted. You showed that the Empire isn't invincible. That matters more than you know. As the weeks passed, the facility on Europa became the heart of the Resistance effort. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock to develop new weapons based on the Mantis design. The surviving crew members trained new recruits in the tactics that had proven effective against Imperial technology. And in a massive construction bay carved from Europa's ice, a new vessel began to take shape. Not a direct copy of the Mantis, but an evolution of its design, incorporating lessons learned from its final battle and new technologies developed by Resistance scientists. Dewey spent long hours in the construction bay, overseeing the integration of systems and ensuring that every component met his exacting standards. His injuries still pained him, but he refused to rest while work remained to be done. You need to pace yourself, Dr. Hoa chided him one day, finding him reviewing shield harmonics long after most of the facility had gone to sleep. The war won't be won in a day. The Empire is gathering a new fleet at Epsilon Eridani, Dewey replied. Intelligence suggests it will be twice the size of the one we faced at Sol. We may not have much time. All the more reason to ensure you're at your best when the moment comes, she countered. The Resistance needs you healthy, not exhausted. Dewey knew she was right, but the memories of Earth's surrender haunted him. The knowledge that the Global Council had been willing to submit to Imperial rule without a fight fueled his determination to prepare for the next confrontation. As the new vessel neared completion, word arrived that the Imperial Reinforcement Fleet had departed Epsilon Aerodani, heading for the Sol system. Their intention was clear: to crush the Resistance and make an example of Earth for its defiance. "We're not ready," Major Ann reported during an emergency meeting of Resistance leadership. "The new ship's weapons are operational, but the shields are untested, and the reactor isn't at full capacity." "We can't wait for perfection," Dewey replied. "We'll have to engage them with what we have." Lieutenant Hale nodded in agreement. "Better to fight on our terms than wait for them to find this base. If Europa falls, the Resistance loses its heart." The decision was made. The new vessel, christened Phoenix in honor of its rebirth from the Mantis's destruction, would launch within 48 hours to intercept the Imperial fleet before it reached Earth. As final preparations were made, Dewey addressed the crew that would accompany him on this mission. Many were veterans of the Mantis, but others were new recruits who had joined the Resistance after hearing of their victory at Sol. "What we accomplished with the Mantis was thought impossible," he told them. "We faced the most powerful fleet in the galaxy with a single ship and emerged victorious. But that was just the beginning. The Empire now knows we can hurt them, and they will be prepared. This battle will be harder, the odds even longer." He paused, looking at each face in turn. "I cannot promise that we will all return, but I can promise that what we do today will echo across the stars. Every world that suffers under Imperial rule is watching. We fight, not just for Earth, but for all who dream of freedom." The Phoenix launched from Europa's hidden bay, rising through the thin atmosphere of the Moon and accelerating toward the outer reaches of the solar system. Unlike the Mantis's stealthy approach, this mission was announced by a transmission broadcast on all frequencies, a direct challenge to the approaching Imperial fleet. "This is Major Le Quang-Dui of the Earth Resistance," the message stated. "To the commanders of the Imperial fleet, we have destroyed your Armada once. Withdraw from the Sol system now, or we will do so again." It was a bold claim for a single vessel facing hundreds, but the psychological impact was immediate. Imperial communications became frantic as commanders debated how to respond to the threat. The memory of Admiral Varick's destruction was still fresh in their minds. The Phoenix intercepted the Imperial fleet near the orbit of Mars. The enemy vessels had spread out in a wide formation, clearly wary of concentrating their forces, as they had done at Sol. "They've adapted their tactics," observed Major Ann from the tactical station. "They're maintaining distance between vessels to limit the effectiveness of area weapons." "As expected," Dewey replied. "Activate the Talon system." The Phoenix's version of the Mantis Hawk swarm was more advanced. Larger drones with greater range and firepower, capable of independent operation for extended periods. As they deployed, the Imperial fleet responded with waves of fighter craft, creating a massive dogfight in the space between the opposing forces. The battle that followed was unlike anything seen in the Sol system. The Phoenix darted between Imperial formations, its weapons tearing through shields calibrated against conventional attacks. The Talon drones formed a protective screen around the Resistance vessel, intercepting incoming fire and destroying smaller enemy ships with precision strikes. But the Imperial fleet was vast, and despite their fear, they fought with determination. The Phoenix suffered damage to its port weapons array, and several key systems were operating at reduced capacity as the battle entered its second hour. "We can't maintain this pace," Dr. Hoa warned from the engineering station. "The reactor is showing signs of instability under combat conditions." Dewey studied the tactical display, noting how the Imperial vessels were gradually encircling the Phoenix, cutting off avenues of escape. They had learned from their previous defeat and were now fighting more cautiously, wearing down the Resistance ship through sustained pressure rather than direct confrontation. "We need to change the equation," Dewey decided. "Prepare the Sunflare protocol." The Sunflare was a last resort weapon, developed based on data from the Mantis's final attack. It utilized the ship's reactor in a controlled overload, channeling the energy into a spherical burst rather than a directed beam. The effect would be less destructive than the Mantis's final act, but could be used without sacrificing the Phoenix itself. "Reactor configured for Sunflare," Dr. Hoa reported. "But I must caution, this will drain our power reserves significantly. We'll be vulnerable for several minutes afterward." "Understood," Dewey acknowledged. "Position us at the center of their formation." The Phoenix accelerated directly toward the heart of the Imperial fleet, absorbing punishing fire as it closed the distance. Shields flickered and failed in sections, exposing the hull beneath to enemy weapons. "Now," Dewey ordered as they reached the optimal position. The Sunflare activated, releasing a pulse of energy that expanded outward from the Phoenix in all directions. Imperial shields, designed to repel direct attacks, provided little protection against this omnidirectional assault. Dozens of vessels lost power immediately as the energy wave overloaded their systems. In the aftermath, the Phoenix drifted, its own power systems temporarily drained by the massive energy expenditure. The bridge was operating on emergency lighting, and several stations had gone dark completely. "Damage report," Dai requested. "Hull breaches on decks 2 and 4, reported the damage control officer. "Life support at 60% capacity. Weapon systems offline. Reactor in cooldown phase. Estimated time to restoration of main power, 7 minutes. 7 minutes of absolute vulnerability in the middle of an enemy fleet. Dewey watched the tactical display, waiting for the inevitable counterattack from the vessels that had survived the Sunflare. But it didn't come. Instead, the Imperial fleet was withdrawing, creating distance between themselves and the Phoenix. The Sunflare had done more than damage their ships. It had broken their will to fight. The memory of the Mantis's destruction, combined with this new demonstration of Earth's technological capabilities, had convinced the Imperial commanders that continuing the battle was too risky. "They're retreating," Major Anne reported, disbelief evident in her voice. "All vessels are disengaging and forming up for hyperspace jumps." The bridge crew exchanged looks of stunned relief. They had expected to fight to the last, yet somehow they had prevailed again, not through complete destruction of the enemy, but through the power of fear and uncertainty. As power gradually returned to the Phoenix's systems, Dewey ordered a course back to Europa. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The Empire would return, perhaps with even greater forces, determined to crush the rebellion that had humiliated them twice. But for now, they had earned a respite, time to repair, to plan, and to build. The resistance would grow stronger with each passing day, inspired by the victories at Sol and Mars. New ships would be constructed based on the Phoenix design, forming the nucleus of a fleet that could challenge Imperial dominance. As the Phoenix approached Europa, its hull scarred but intact, Dewey stood at the viewscreen, gazing at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Empire was regrouping, plotting its revenge. But humanity had proven that it would not be conquered without a fight. The Mantis, the forgotten prototype that had sparked this resistance, was gone. But its legacy lived on in the Phoenix and in every act of defiance against Imperial rule. From a discarded project buried beneath the Nevada desert had emerged humanity's greatest hope for freedom. Dewey turned from the viewscreen to face his crew. "This is just the beginning," he told them. "The real war starts now." The Phoenix descended toward Europa's surface, vanishing beneath the icy crust to the hidden facility below. But its presence in the solar system would not be forgotten by the people of Earth who now dared to hope for liberation, or by the Empire that had learned to fear a supposedly inferior species. As Dewey had said, the war was just beginning. But for the first time since the Imperial fleet had appeared in Earth's skies, the outcome was no longer certain. A single ship, an ignored prototype deemed too dangerous to deploy, had changed the course of history. And somewhere among the stars, As news of Earth's resistance spread from world to world, other subjugated planets began to wonder if they too might break the chains of imperial rule.